Let me start with this. Like, Abdul Carter from Penn State is clearly the number one, defensive end, edge, pass rusher, you know, player. Is he a generational player, or talent? I don't even know what that really would be defined as. I guess a generation is what, 20 years? He's not that. I think he's a bit undersized and kind of unpolished when you watch him, but quick twitch, super explosive, high motor. The game he played against Notre Dame, and Eric Edholm and I were talking about this when he was on in the semifinals, when he was clearly injured, he had a shoulder injury. That was a warrior out there in that game. You love to see that. Is he Myles Garrett when he came out in 2017? No. First of all, Garrett was bigger, and Garrett's athleticism was just better. By the way, I went back and looked at 2017's RAS scores, the relative athletic scores from that draft. The only 10 out of 10 in that draft was Marshawn Lattimore. And then Garrett was number 2 at 9.99, so he was nearly perfect in terms of the athletic score. And number 3 was Fabian Moreau. Remember him? I'll tell you what, I remember watching Fabian Moreau in Richmond after they drafted him, and I'm like, compared to their other corners, I'm like, at least this guy's long and can run, because he was an athlete. Where's Fabian Moreau playing right now? He's somewhere. Is he with the Rams? Might be with the Rams. Anyway, I don't think Abdul Carter is Myles Garrett. He might be Nick Bosa. He's probably every bit of what Joey Bosa is. Not same kind of players. I don't think he's what Chase Young was coming out. Chase Young was a borderline generational prospect coming out. Trayvon Walker, who Jacksonville took number one overall. He's a little bit different because he's bigger. That's a tough comparison. But Carter's really good. So explosive, quick twitch first step. I mean, relentless high motor player. Micah Parsons, he led the nation in tackles for loss. He was number 2 in pressures, number 7 in sacks. His health has been a bit of a question, not just the shoulder, but there were some other things leading into it, which, didn't have him test for things like relative athletic score. But he's the number 1 edge in this draft, and he's clearly a player worthy of taking in the top 2 or 3 in this draft. I think Travis Hunter is the best all-around player in the draft. I think Carter is in the conversation for the number 2 player in the draft. Washington doesn't have a chance for him, obviously, so I don't want to waste any more time with him. But in looking at the position, it's kind of like what I talked about with the running back position. I said there's Genty, and then there are like 10 or 11 guys that basically they're all good. They all have strengths. They all have, weaknesses. None of them look like Saquon Barkley. Doesn't mean that they won't become that, but as a prospect, they're not that. And edge defensive end is similar, although I think there is a number 2. And I think instead of Genty and everybody else, I think it's Carter, and I think it's Mike Green from Marshall, and then everybody else. Green's productivity, good God, at Marshall was he productive. He led the nation in sacks. He became an excellent run defender last year. His frame is really the issue. He's like 245, 250. There was some red flag stuff on him in high school and at UVA before he transferred to Marshall. Sexual harassment allegations, plural allegations. Not charged in either case. Teams are going to have to figure him out, because to me, if he starts to drop past like the top half of the draft, teams found out stuff about him that scared them, because I think it's obvious that he's the second best talent as a pass rusher in the draft. So for me, after Carter and Green, then it's like a hodgepodge of everything. So much of it will be about what teams like in the player, like in the person, how their fit is within their scheme defensively. Like a guy like Jalen Walker from Georgia is really more of a hybrid outside linebacker in a 3-4 more than he is a DN, but who knows? Maybe somebody projects him to that and thinks that he will be great. I mean, there's no doubt about his talent, even though he's only 240 pounds. But Washington's not going to have a shot at him either. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M is super off the charts athletic, but he never had more than 1.5 sacks in a season. Like, now, he had a ton of pressures. I think he's another guy just because of the athletic talent. He'll be off the board at 29. So if you take Carter, Walker, Stewart, and Green, and you say, to me, it's Carter and Green, and then everybody else, is a matter of preference and due diligence, et cetera. But if those four are gone, and I think there's a decent chance those four will be gone, then we're talking about guys like Michael Williams from Georgia, Donovan Azaraku from Boston College, James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State, Landon Jackson from Arkansas, Nick Scorton from Texas A&M, Femi Oladejo from UCLA. These are the guys that are in the mix for Washington in the first round, but some of these guys might be available in the second round, especially if they trade back. So let me tell you, about those guys. So I'll start with James Pierce Jr. because I mentioned him on Friday. I would bet he's off their board. There is just too much out there, and you never know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just telling you what is, and this isn't even subtle in terms of the scouting reports and what all of the draft people are saying, is that there is a real concern about his love for football. I think I read, what was the quote I read about him? That basically one front office person said, we have to be convinced that he loves playing football. That's not a Washington player with this organization, with this front office. He's talented. He's a first-round talent for sure, and was productive, and has, by the way, that 10-yard drill at the combine number that Adam Peters likes. I just don't think they'll take him unless they did their due diligence and said, yeah, none of this is true. It just got, those things are also always possible. Ezeraku, to me, is just a pass rusher at this point. He is 6'2", 245. I don't think he is a guy that sets the edge in Washington's base defense and is a real run stopper as a young player. But man, as a situational pass rusher, this is a guy who, in a 4-3 base scheme at BC, led his team in sacks, in TFLs, finished top 3 in the country in sacks and TFLs. He is bendy. He is quick twitch. He is apparently a high-quality kid. So if they are looking for the 10.5 sacks that Dante Fowler Jr. took with them, and they don't think that they can scheme it up with Luvu or with, any of the other players that they've brought in, and they're looking for a pure pass rusher, Ezeraku's possible at 29. I think his pass rushing ability is so great he's gone by 29. That's my guess. But you could not go wrong with the character and the pass rushing ability of Donovan Ezeraku. The problem is you're not helping your run defense and your edge rush defense by drafting him. Not early in his career, anyway. I like a couple of players that I think are second-round grades that could sneak into the first round. Nick Scorton's not my favorite. I'll just tell you that. That's somebody that Ben talked about, and Ben's mocked a couple of times, I believe. The guy's had some weight issues. I love his motor. I love his character, all of those things. He's a good player. He's a productive player. But, at one point he was like 285. And then, he shows up at the combine at 257. He doesn't look like the strongest of players. And I just wonder whether or not he would just be one of those DNs that, gets moved easily. He's not my favorite of the players that come after the guys that I've mentioned. I love Landon Jackson from Arkansas. Landon Jackson is 6'6", 265, four-man front at Arkansas, true D end, athletic, big, strong, can rush the passer, can set the edge. He, along with my guy from Ohio State, JT Tuimoloau, to me, after a guy like Green and Carter, are the true edge run stoppers in this draft. Guys that would be available potentially at 29 or even in the second round. So I love Jackson. I love, as I've mentioned, Tuimoloau. And where's the rest of my list here? I like Mykel Williams a lot. I don't know that he's going to be there at 29, but Mykel Williams from Georgia is a guy that played all over the place and is talented and has the size and has the length. I mean, he's got super long arms. They're like 35 inches. He just looks the part of a D end. I think you can move him all over the place. He's a player I think that they would have a lot of fun with, in the same way they do with Luvu. I think that they would have that with Mykel Williams. I would love Mykel Williams at 29. I would take that in a heartbeat. I think he is solid against the run. I think you'll see, if you've watched him before, just that long-armed ability to, be disruptive at the line of scrimmage. He also really is one of those guys that if he sniffs out a quarterback, he closes the deal. I would say Azaraku and Mykel Williams at 29, I'd be fine with either one. My preference, though, would be if they traded back and got a Jackson or a Tuimoloau from Ohio State and also added something else. I like Oladejo from UCLA, just played DN for the first time. He was at Cal and played, middle linebacker at one point. And the guy Kyle Kennard from South Carolina, I don't think he is, even a night 2 pick. He might be a night 2 pick. He's impressive. He's another guy that kind of lined up hand in the ground or, 2-point stance and was productive at South Carolina. Liked a lot about him, including his arm length and size at 6'4" and 255, 260. All right. There's some of the edge rushers. More on them later in the show or tomorrow.